In the middle of the Sahara Desert, where the sand dunes were once considered a complete barrier to progress, a massive network of steel and automated machinery is currently rising from the dust. In the lush valleys of Ethiopia, a high-speed electrical grid is being woven across mountains, powered by the largest dam in the continent's history. A multi-billion-dollar deep-sea port is being built that will allow the world's largest cargo ships to dock in Africa for the very first time. This isn't just a series of random construction projects. Multi-trillion-dollar geopolitical strategy led by China that is fundamentally rewriting the map of the African continent. By the year 2026, 7 specific megaprojects are scheduled to reach a critical stage of completion, effectively turning Africa into a global manufacturing and logistics hub. While many Western observers have been focused on local challenges, China has been busy laying down thousands of miles of track, pouring millions of tons of concrete, and installing the digital backbone of a new era. This is a story of engineering on an impossible scale, and it is changing the lives of over 1 billion people. To understand the magnitude of what is happening, we have to start with the most ambitious railway project since the colonial era, the East Africa Railway Master Plan. Historically, traveling between neighboring African countries was an absolute nightmare. Goods from Ethiopia would often have to be shipped all the way to Europe before they could reach a neighboring African port. China is changing that with the Standard Gauge Railway, or SGR. The flagship line, connecting the port of Mombasa in Kenya to the capital of Nairobi, is just the beginning. By 2026, this network is being extended into Uganda, Rwanda, and South Sudan. This isn't your grandfather's railroad. These are high-speed, modern electric trains that have reduced travel time from days to hours. But the real genius is in the dry ports. China is building massive logistics centers in the interior of the continent, allowing landlocked countries to process international trade as if they were on the coast. It is a total collapse of distance, and it is turning East Africa into a single, unified economic zone. The second megaproject on our list is perhaps the most controversial, but also the most transformative: the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or GERD. While Ethiopia began this project itself, Chinese engineering firms and billions in Chinese state-backed loans have been the literal power behind its completion. By 2026, this dam will be fully operational, producing over 5,000 megawatts of electricity. To put that in perspective, that is enough to double Ethiopia's entire national power output, and still have enough left over to export electricity to neighboring Kenya, Sudan, and Djibouti. China isn't just helping build the dam. They are building the Energy Silk Road, a massive high-voltage transmission network that connects Ethiopia's hydroelectric power to the rest of the continent. This is the green battery of Africa. It provides the cheap, reliable industrial power that factories need to move away from small-scale farming and into large-scale manufacturing. But power and transport are nothing without a place to ship the goods. Which brings us to our third megaproject, the Lekki deep-sea port in Nigeria. For decades, the port of Lagos was one of the world's most congested. Ships would sit anchored for weeks just waiting for a spot to unload. China Harbor Engineering Company changed that by building a brand new, 60-fathom deep-sea port from scratch. This is now the largest and deepest port in sub-Saharan Africa. By 2026, the automation systems installed by Chinese tech firms will allow Lekki to handle nearly 3 million containers a year. This isn't just a dock, it's an entire new city project. Surrounding the port is the Lagos Free Zone, a massive industrial park where Chinese companies are already building assembly plants for electronics, pharmaceutical factories, and food processing centers. They are creating a just-in-time manufacturing ecosystem that mimics the industrial zones of Shenzhen or Guangzhou. Now, let's look at something truly futuristic: the new administrative capital of Egypt. Just outside the ancient streets of Cairo, a brand new city is being built in the middle of the desert. The centerpiece of this city is the iconic tower, which is now the tallest building in Africa. But why is this a China project? Because the entire central business district is being built by the China State Construction Engineering Corporation. This is more than just skyscrapers. It's a cognitive city. This capital will be the most digitally connected city on the continent, with a fiber-optic nervous system installed by Huawei and data centers managed by Chinese cloud providers. Egypt is moving its entire government out of the crowded, historic center of Cairo and into this purpose-built tech hub. It represents a pivot toward the modern age. fueled by Chinese capital and engineering. The fifth megaproject involves the very thing that makes the modern world run: minerals. Specifically, the Simandou iron ore project in Guinea. Simandou contains the world's largest untapped deposit of high-grade iron ore. For years, the project was stalled because of the sheer difficulty of getting the ore out of the remote mountains and to the sea. China solved this by forming the winning consortium Simandou. They aren't just building a mine. They are building a 600-kilometer Transgoanan railway that cuts through mountain ranges and over massive bridges, ending at a brand-new deep-water port on the Atlantic coast. By 2026, this project will begin shipping millions of tons of iron ore directly to Chinese steel mills. This isn't just a mining project. It is a massive injection of infrastructure into one of the most remote regions of West Africa, creating tens of thousands of jobs and a transportation spine that will likely be used for centuries. Number 6 takes us to the southern tip of the continent, the Musina-Mikado Special Economic Zone in South Africa. As South Africa struggles with energy shortages and aging infrastructure, China is stepping in to build a massive heavy industrial cluster near the border with Zimbabwe. This project includes a massive coal-fired power plant, a coking plant, a ferrochrome plant, and a stainless steel plant. This zone is expected to attract billions in investment and become the beating heart of Southern Africa's industrial machine. While many are moving away from heavy industry, China recognizes that for a continent to develop, it needs the basic building blocks of modern life: steel, cement, and electricity. This SEZ is designed to be the engine of the South, providing the materials needed to build the buildings and machines that will drive Africa's future. The seventh and perhaps most invisible megaproject is the Digital Silk Road. We often focus on the concrete and steel, but the invisible network is just as powerful. China has funded and built nearly 80% of Africa's 4G and 5G infrastructure. By 2026, the Peace Cable, a massive submarine fiber optic line that runs from Pakistan and China, under the Indian Ocean, and makes landing points across the African coast, will be fully integrated. This gives Africa high-speed, low-latency access to the global internet, without relying on older, Western-controlled cables. Combined with the massive satellite ground stations China is building in countries like Ethiopia and Egypt, Africa is being plugged into a digital ecosystem that is primarily Chinese-built. From mobile payment systems like M-Pesa, which are often powered by Chinese-style fintech, to the very smartphones in people's hands, the digital future of Africa is being coded in Mandarin. Now, why does this matter for 26? That year is significant because it marks the culmination of the latest Forum on China-Africa Cooperation 3-year plan. It's the year when the early harvest phase of these mega projects is scheduled to turn into full production. We are seeing a fundamental shift in how the world works. For over a century, Africa was seen as a source of raw materials for the West. But the Chinese model is different. They are building the infrastructure that allows Africa to move up the value chain. They aren't just taking the iron ore. They are building the steel plant. They aren't just taking the cotton. They are building the textile factory. By 26, we will see the emergence of a Made in Africa brand that is heavily supported by Chinese logistics and technology. The scale of the Trans-African Highway is another component that the AI and geopolitical analysts are watching closely. China is currently funding and building segments of a highway system that aims to connect Algiers in the north to Lagos in the south, and Mombasa in the east to Dakar in the west. By 26, the Trans-Sahara Highway, a massive road project cutting through some of the toughest terrain on Earth, is expected to be nearly complete. This will allow a truck to drive from the Mediterranean coast all the way to the Gulf of Guinea on paved, modern roads. It effectively kills the Sahara as a barrier to trade. It is an engineering feat that matches anything seen in the American interstate system or the Roman Empire. But what about the debt? This is the million-dollar question. Many Western critics warn of debt-trap diplomacy, arguing that African nations will be unable to pay back these massive Chinese loans. However, many African leaders see it differently. They argue that without this infrastructure, their economies will never grow fast enough to lift their people out of poverty. They see the roads, the dams, and the ports as productive debt investments that will eventually pay for themselves by creating a larger tax base and more trade. By 26, we will see the first major test of this theory. As the grace periods on some of the earlier loans expire, We will see if these megaprojects have generated enough economic activity to keep the system stable. The impact on the local workforce is another massive factor. While early Chinese projects were criticized for bringing in only Chinese workers, the newer megaprojects have a much higher percentage of local labor. In the construction of the Egyptian new capital and the Kenyan SGR, tens of thousands of local engineers, technicians, and laborers have been trained in Chinese construction methods. This is a massive skill transfer that is creating a new class of African professionals who know how to manage projects on a global scale. By 26, this new technocratic class will be the ones running the dams, the ports, and the railways. Let's look at the agro-industrial revolution. China is building dozens of agricultural demonstration centers across the continent. These are high-tech farms where Chinese scientists are working with African farmers to introduce drought-resistant crops, drone-based irrigation, and modern fertilization techniques. By 26, these centers are expected to scale up into massive commercial farming operations. The goal is to turn Africa from a net food importer into a global breadbasket. With the world's population growing, China is securing its future food supply by helping Africa unlock the potential of its vast, uncultivated arable land. It's a win-win. Africa gets food security, and China gets a reliable trading partner for agricultural products. The satellite and space sector is another area where China is making massive moves. China has helped countries like Nigeria, Ethiopia, and Algeria launch their own satellites into orbit. These aren't just for national pride. They are for telecommunications, weather monitoring, and land use mapping. By 26, there are plans for an African Space Agency hub, heavily influenced by Chinese technology. This allows African nations to manage their own resources and disaster responses without relying on Western GPS or satellite data. It is a form of technological sovereignty that China is providing as part of its mega-project package. The shipping lanes of the maritime Silk Road are also being redesigned. Beyond the Lekki port, China is building or expanding ports in Djibouti, Tanzania, and Ivory Coast. By 26, China will have a string of pearls of logistics hubs around the entire African coastline. This allows for a seamless flow of goods between the African interior and the markets of Asia and the Middle East. It is a global conveyor belt of trade. If you buy a product in 26, there is a very good chance that some part of it was handled in a Chinese-built port in Africa. The cultural impact is also massive. Along these megaprojects, China is building dozens of Confucius institutes and vocational schools. Thousands of African students are receiving scholarships to study in Chinese universities, focusing on engineering, medical science, and technology. By 26, there will be a whole generation of African leaders who are as comfortable in Beijing as they are in London or Washington. This is the soft power side of the megaprojects. China isn't just building roads. They are building relationships that will last for decades. One of the most impressive feats is the standardization of Africa. By using Chinese standards for the railways, the electrical grids, and the digital networks, the continent is beginning to operate on a single technological platform. This makes it incredibly easy for different African countries to trade with each other. For the first time, a train from Kenya can run on the tracks of Ethiopia without changing wheels. A phone from Nigeria works seamlessly on the 5G network of Ghana. This interoperability is the secret sauce of the Chinese plan. They are creating a unified African market that is by default compatible with the Chinese economy. The smart city movement is also spreading beyond Egypt. In countries like Rwanda and Senegal, China is helping build innovation cities from the ground up. These are urban centers designed for the tech economy, with integrated high-speed rail, green energy, and fiber optic connectivity. By 26, these cities will be the launch pads for African startups in fintech, e-commerce, and artificial intelligence. Rwanda, often called the Singapore of Africa, is at the forefront of this trend, using Chinese investment to leapfrog into the fourth industrial revolution. But it's not just about the big cities. The last-mile projects are also significant. China is funding and building thousands of miles of rural roads and bridges that connect small villages to the major highways. This is the capillary system of the megaprojects. It allows a small-scale farmer to get their produce to the dry port and then to the global market. By 26, this connectivity will have pulled millions of people out of subsistence living and into the cash economy. It is the largest poverty reduction effort in history, mimicking what China did for its own people over the last 40 years. The environmental aspect is also evolving. While early projects were criticized for ignoring ecological impact, the Green Silk Road Initiative is changing that. By 26, many of the Chinese-funded power projects will be focused on solar, wind, and hydroelectric power. In South Africa, Chinese companies are building some of the largest solar farms in the world. In Morocco, they are involved in massive concentrated solar power plants. China is positioning itself as the green partner for Africa, helping the continent develop without following the high-carbon path of the West. The Belt and Road Initiative in Africa is also creating new logistics corridors that bypass traditional bottlenecks. For example, the Lamu Port South Sudan-Ethiopia Transport (LEPESSET) corridor is a massive multimodal project that will link the Kenyan coast to the interior of East Africa. By 26, this corridor will provide a whole new outlet for the oil and mineral wealth of South Sudan and Ethiopia, reducing their dependence on the unstable routes through the Horn of Africa. It is a geopolitical safety valve that ensures the flow of resources continues even in times of regional tension. The medical side of the megaprojects is also reaching a peak. China is building the Africa CDC headquarters in Ethiopia, a state-of-the-art facility for disease control and research. By 26, this will be the center of a continental health network, with Chinese-built hospitals and clinics in dozens of countries. From providing vaccines to training doctors, China is building the health infrastructure of Africa. This is a massive human capital investment that ensures the workforce of the future is healthy and capable of running the industrial machine they are building. The financial infrastructure is the final piece of the puzzle. By 26, the use of the Chinese yuan in African trade is expected to reach an all-time high. Several African central banks have already added the yuan to their reserve currencies. China is helping build the digital payment infrastructure that allows for direct trade without going through the US dollar. This financial autonomy is a major draw for African nations that want to insulate themselves from Western sanctions or currency fluctuations. It is a de-dollarization of the continent. When we look at these 7 megaprojects collectively, a clear picture emerges. It is a picture of a continent being re-engineered. From the deep-sea ports to the high-speed rails, from the massive dams to the 5G networks, every part of the plan fits together. It is a total system approach to development. China isn't just building projects. They are building a new Africa. The results will be so large that they will be impossible for the rest of the world to ignore. The terrifying part for Western observers is the speed and the scale. Projects that would take 20 years in Europe or America are being completed in 5 years in Africa. The Chinese approach of infrastructure first is proving to be incredibly effective at creating economic momentum. While the West often focuses on governance and human rights, China focuses on concrete and cables. They believe that once the people have jobs, electricity, and a way to get their goods to market, the rest will follow. By 26, we will see if this development-first model is the future of the Global South. The impact on global trade will be profound. It will begin to compete with traditional hubs in Asia and Eastern Europe. The great migration of industry from the high-cost West to the low-cost Global South is accelerating. Nigeria, Ethiopia, and Kenya are being positioned as the new Chinas of the world, and China will be the one providing the tools, the technology, and the markets. It is a global pivot that is centered on the African continent. As we stand on the threshold of 26, the vision for Africa is one of transformation. The sandstorms of the Sahara, the impassable mountains of the Rift Valley, and the clogged ports of the Atlantic are all being tamed by Chinese engineering. The sleeping giant of Africa is waking up, and it is waking up with Chinese-built alarm clocks, running on a Chinese-built grid, and moving on Chinese-built rails. It is the most significant geopolitical and engineering story of our time. The African century is no longer a dream. It is a construction site. And thanks to these 7 Chinese megaprojects, by 26, the world will finally see what a rising Africa actually looks like. It is a world where the Nile is powered by dams, the desert is crossed by trains, and the coast is lined with deep-sea ports. It is a world of connectivity, industrialization, and digital integration. It is a world where Africa is finally in the driver's seat of its own destiny, running on a Chinese-built engine. The cooperation between these 2 regions is fundamentally changing the global balance of power. The North-South divide is being replaced by a Global South alliance that is bypassing traditional power centers. The road to the future no longer leads only to London, Paris or New York. It leads to Addis Ababa, Nairobi, and Cairo. And from there, it leads directly to Beijing. This is the new world being built right now, one mega project at a time. As we look at the skyscrapers of the new Egyptian capital and the massive spans of the bridges in Kenya, we can see the skyline of the future. It is a skyline of ambition and resilience. It is a skyline that shows humanity can still do big things. We can still bridge continents and power nations. We can still turn the desert green and the mountains accessible. And in the story of the 21st century, the most exciting chapter is being written in the red soil of Africa, with Chinese ink. The showcase year of 26 will be the moment of truth. It will be the year when the trains are running, the power is flowing, and the ports are full. It will be the year when the digital Silk Road is humming with data, and the agricultural centers are harvesting their first major crops. It will be the year when the world finally realizes that the future of Africa isn't something that might happen. It's something that has already been built. The mega plan is working. And the world will never be the same. Africa is no longer the hopeless continent. It is the continent of hope. And that hope is built on a foundation of granite and steel, laid down by the world's most ambitious engineers. When Africa was divided by European powers, to 2026, when it is being unified by Chinese megaprojects, is one of the most incredible turnarounds in human history. The broken link of the world is being mended, and it's being fixed with 26,000-ton dock cranes and high-speed electric locomotives. As the sun sets over the Great Renaissance Dam in 26, the lights will turn on across villages that have been in the dark for centuries. The children in those villages will have 5G internet in their classrooms, medicine from a Chinese-built CDC in their clinics, and a high-speed train to take them to work in the new cities of the coast. That is the true impact of the megaprojects. It's not just about the money or the power. It's about the people. It's about the millions of lives that are being changed by a vision of progress that is as large as the continent itself. The China-Africa megaproject narrative is a story of a partnership that is shaking the world. It is a story of a new kind of globalization, one that is centered on infrastructure and industrialization. The blueprints will finally become the reality. The Great Wall of China hasn't just moved, it has turned into a great road through Africa. And that road is leading everyone into a brand new future. The revolution is here, and it's built of stone, steel, and light.